Welcome, everyone, to our Productive Environment podcast, PEPTalk. So if you need a pep talk on how to get organized and be more productive, this is the destination for you. I am Andrea Anderson. I am here with Barbara Hemphill, founder of Productive Environment Institute. And we're going to talk to you today about Less Clutter, More Life in the new year. Just real quick, for those of you that don't know Barbara, she's kind of famous for this quote, specifically, clutter is postponed decisions. She is a respected expert in physical, digital, emotional, and spiritual clutter, and known for many years as the Paper Tiger Lady. And her books include all of these at the bottom. And then one more, we actually have a 20th anniversary edition of one that was just re-released. Love it or lose it, living clutter-free forever. Because Barbara, your principles, first of all, clutter still exists, and your principles, right? And your principles still exist. And she's been featured through many, many decades on all of these periodicals. I won't go through them all. And then even more recently, in 2023, she is one of the top 100 innovators and entrepreneurs. And I swear, if that doesn't describe you, Barbara, I don't know what does. Top innovator and entrepreneur. And also, she just also received the CIO Today Awards for 2023 as one of the most impactful businesswomen of the year in 2023. So those are the professional credentials of Barbara. But what you also would like to know is that she's just a really down-to-earth, awesome person. So Barbara, welcome.
Oh, it's so exciting to be here. I just am thrilled to have an opportunity to talk to people about clutter because, as you said, it still exists. And in fact, it exists more in some ways than ever before because our lives are so full of stuff and ideas, and people are so overwhelmed. And I just, when somebody says, I have to go to work, it makes me feel so sad because I believe God created us to work, but I think he created us to do work that we love and isn't really work. And what often prevents that from happening is clutter.
Yeah, exactly. So with that in mind, Barbara, let's address that statement that clutter is postponed decisions. Let's address that. And also, if you would kind of mention how we see it quoted or misquoted multiple times across the cyber world and kind of why that's important, if we can just talk about that.
Well, the statement clutter is postponed decisions came out of my very early days of organizing residential. And I first absorbed it in closets because I would be standing with someone with an item of clothing and it was clutter. And it was like, well, this costs a lot of money and I might need this again somewhere. And just all of those, it's like they had to make a decision. And that was hard. And the reason making decisions is hard, and this is the most important, it's about the emotion. Most often, the emotion is fear. It's fear of making a mistake, fear of forgetting, fear of offending someone, fear of wanting it back. And so that emotion, and to your question about how do people change it, if you Google it do a Google search, you'll see that often when people quote it, they add an adverb. So they say clutter is only postponed decisions, or merely postponed decisions, or just postponed decisions, or simply postponed decisions. And when people hear it that way, it has such a negative effect because, if it's just postponed decisions, then why am I having so much trouble? So then they're reluctant to ask for help because they're embarrassed. I spoke at a very large conference and of attorneys. And afterwards, one of the top attorneys in the country came up and said, I'd die if you saw my office. And it's like our clients are some of the most successful, creative, intelligent, interesting people. And when you are that kind of a person, that means there's lots of stuff that comes into your life. And one of the myths, I think this is so, if you don't hear anything else today, Here, people think that if they just got organized, they would be able to keep everything, do everything, have everything. And that is a lie. That is a myth. And so clutter is about what is it? How do you define clutter? And at Productive Environment Institute, we define clutter very, very easily by asking, does this, whatever this is, this can be physical, it can be digital, it can be an idea in your head, does this help me accomplish my work or enjoy my life? If it doesn't, it's clutter and you can't afford it.
Mm-hmm. Amen. Amen. So we talked about closed closets and homes and clutter in the homes, and that's postponed decisions. How does that apply to businesses? And when I say businesses, I mean, that could be companies, but also the individual. And now more than ever, more people are working at home. They have a home-based business or they have an office in the home. How does clutter as postponed decisions apply to the physical, let's say, command center in your home or your office?
Well, one of the places we can start with, which is true for every business owner, entrepreneur, solopreneur, is email. So you open up email, open, close, open, close, open, close, open, close. And the next thing you know, 45 minutes has gone by and nothing has changed except your mood. It's like, oh, I'm so far behind because there wasn't a decision made. And so one of the things we teach people is if you're not willing to make a decision on an email, this is not the time to open it up. The same is true of papers. I mean, how many times does somebody have a pile of papers on their desk and say, okay, today is the day I'm going to clean this up? And you pick up the first piece of paper and think of any number of reasons why today's not a good day to decide about this. And you move it over here, and then you pick up the second piece. Oh, I'm not sure, maybe later, I'm not sure. And the fourth, and before you know it, the pile was on this side, and your watch gives you an alarm. It says it's time to jump on a podcast or it's time to talk with the client. Clutter is always postponed decisions. So part of what we teach people is not, many organizing consultants work with people on saying this is what you should do. There are no shoulds.
Right.
And when a client says to us, what should I do? We say, that's the wrong question. The question is, what will you do? And organizing in and of itself has no value. And I suspect everybody knows somebody that spends all of their time organizing and reorganizing. Always start trying another system, trying another planner. We're at the time of the year where we're looking at calendars and planners, right? Oh my gosh. We have clients who spent hundreds and maybe even thousands of dollars through the years on calendars, but it never works. Well, the reason it doesn't work is because they're not analyzing why it isn't working and doing something about it. So we don't tell people what to do. We teach them how to make decisions. And if you learn how to make decisions, then regardless of what you're dealing with, you'll make some progress and it'll be very exciting and rewarding. And not only will you be helping yourself, you will be enabling others to do the same.
Mm-hmm. Perfect. That's great. Yeah. And you talked about email. We're actually going to be this afternoon today talking about email in our digital transformation boot camp. So we have these small boot camps that we put together to help people with their digital information. And then we also have another boot camp that we help people with their physical information. So if you are looking at your workspace, your desk, and you see piles of paper, or you're looking at your computer and you see lots of different files and your email inbox is full, then that's something that you're going to want to look into. I'm going to put up our website on the screen. So productiveenvironment.com. If you go there and you've got a question for us, first of all, wherever you're watching, you can post a comment or a question there in the comments. I think if you're whatever platform you're watching us on, you should be able to do that. But also, if you would like more information, go to productiveenvironment.com, and in the contact, there's a little contact button in the bottom. You click there and that message actually comes to me directly. So if you've got a question about something Barbara shared or you want to know about our programs, certainly go check that out. So I'm excited about that. Barbara, could you very briefly talk about the difference between the physical clutter and the digital clutter and how we address both?
Well, the biggest thing for both of them is you need to have a system. So dealing with physical clutter, let's talk about paper in particular, because that's really what most people struggle with. And paper, my first best-selling book was Taming the Paper Tiger, because I found that paper was the thing that was most difficult, and it still is. And here's an interesting thing. We're supposed to be paperless. We actually still have a lot of paper, or a lot of individuals they maybe have gone paperless like in the last 3 to 5 years, but they haven't dealt with the paper before that. And so there's still that paper as well. So we use the acronym SYSTEM of saving you space, time, energy, and money. So for handling the paper and handling digital documents, there needs to be a system. It's not enough. And Andrea came up with this years ago, and it was life-changing. She said, Barbara, it's not enough to make a decision. You have to have a way to implement the decision. And that's true. So if you have a piece of paper, for example, or a digital document, and you say, okay, I want this, but I don't need this until June of next year. What is your system so that in June of next year, you're going to be able to have that document?
Yeah, that's great. And we titled this today's episode "Less Clutter, More Life in the New Year." And I just want to share our kind of thought process around doing this podcast. So PEPTalk is Productive Environment Podcast, and PEPTalk. So we want to give you guys inspiration, motivation to take action to create a productive environment in your space. But one of the things that was important to us was not to wait until the new year to start something new. So this is something that's important to us. And why wait until January? Think about that. How many things have you put off because you're going to do it at the first of the year? You're going to, when this year's over, I'm going to have a clean slate. You know what? You can give yourself a clean slate today. So we decided we're going to launch our podcast in the middle of December instead of the beginning of January.
Well, that fits in with something else that I've lived by. My first mother-in-law was a polio survivor and a mother of 6 children. And she had a saying that I just love. It was finish in style. And I was like, whatever you start, finish it. And so instead of procrastinating by saying, I'll deal with that next year, you've got time to finish in style now. And maybe finish doesn't mean get it all done perfectly, but get a plan in place so that you know what you're going to do. Because every day is important. You don't want to waste any time whatsoever. And I think, Andrea, one of the things that's important we want to get on here for sure is our 5-step process for how you identify how you're going to solve a problem. So it's a very simple framework that we use all the time. The step 1 is state your vision. So in order to solve, we did this with the podcast. When we started talking about the podcast, it's like, okay, what's our vision for the podcast? Yeah, how often are we going to do and what we want people to know and do? State your vision. Second one is identify your obstacles. What have you tried that didn't work in the past? Or what are you afraid of that would prevent you? So that's an obstacle. And of course, people always put an obstacle as time and money. And one of the questions people will say is, how long is this going to take? And how much is it going to cost? And the answer I've given hundreds of times is, I don't know for sure. Number one, I don't know how quickly you make decisions, and that impacts how long it's going to take. But it's also what you need. We don't answer questions, this is what you should do. We want to find out what you want to do first. But what we know for sure is the longer you wait, the longer it's going to take and the more it's going to cost. So it's in lost opportunities. So it's kind of like pay me now or pay me later. So that's step 2. Step 3 is commit your resources. So one of the questions we always ask people is, in order to reach this vision, is this something you want to reach in the next week or in the next 90 days or in the next year or in the next 3 years? And how much time are you willing to commit to this? Because how we structure it depends on all of those kinds of things. And then what do you already have? And what's so interesting, we see this over and over, is that people have resources from other people, but they're reluctant to ask. And I don't know why that is. I guess we think in America, it's like, I can do this myself, sort of thing, or I don't want to bother anybody. But whatever problem it is you're trying to solve, I guarantee you there is somebody else for whom it would not be a problem. And not only would it not be a problem, they'd love to help you because it's something they do naturally that makes them feel good. So commit your resources. And then we get to step 4, which is design and execute your plan. So in order to reach this vision, overcoming these obstacles with these resources, let's come up with a plan that we execute. I grew up on a farm in Nebraska, and my daddy used to use the phrase, where the rubber meets the road. Well, that's where the rubber meets the road. And so one of the things we do is help people come up with that plan. And often people, they procrastinate about coming up with a plan because they think they should do it themselves first. And as a result, they end up doing things that didn't even need to be done, things that they took hours doing. And if they would have talked to us, we could have said, you don't even do that at all. It's like, oh, that wasn't the best use of your time. So don't wait to ask for help and get an assessment early on so that you're not wasting your time doing things that don't need to be done. And then step 5 is sustain your success. There isn't any plan that works perfectly the first time. And unfortunately, a lot of times then people just abandon it. And that's not the time to abandon it. It's the time to go back and look at it again. So let's take the example of a calendar, for example. Let's say that last year your calendar just didn't work. So you're going to say, okay, I want one for this time. So you say, okay, if my calendar worked perfectly, what would I be able to do with it? Like in my case, I need to share it with other people, which means it has to be electronic. So what does success look like? And then what did you try that didn't work? I carried a paper calendar for decades. And what was important to me was the size of it. I have fairly big handwriting. So I used an 8.5 by 11, and I never brought a briefcase that it wouldn't fit in because I never went anywhere without it. So you can use this to figure out what your plan is. When you abandon a plan, always stick with it long enough to figure out why you're abandoning it so that you learn from it. This is the wrong size, or this doesn't have this category. And nothing, no plan, no calendar is perfect. So you want to get the one that's closest to perfect. And then there's always a workaround. That's the art of organizing. And that's one of the things after more than 4 decades. Why do I still do this? I don't have to work anymore. I can just stay home and enjoy the 35-acre lake I'm sitting on and travel. I love helping people figure out how to accomplish their work and enjoy their lives. And a lot of that is having a calendar. As it was years ago, I saw the quote that said, if you want to know what's important to somebody, look at their calendar and their checkbook. Well, today we don't carry checkbooks, but you can look at your bank statement or your credit card statement and things like that. And your calendar is a very important tool. So make sure that you have chosen the calendar that you're going to use for next year.
Awesome. Thank you, Barbara. And I was just thinking, why don't we make that's a great topic for us, that we're in the middle of December right now at the time of this recording. So that'll be our next pep talk. So we will talk to you guys about calendars, and I want to hear from you. We want to know what questions you have about how to pick the right calendar for you for the new year. So go to productiveenvironment.com and you can, like I said, click contact and send a message, and that comes to me, and I'll collect those questions. And we'll ask those questions to Barbara for the next video. If you are joining us now from a platform that allows questions, go ahead and enter them in the question box or the comment box. And if it's something we can address right now, we will. A couple other things, all the links and everything we're mentioning and the resources, we're going to put those in the description box on our YouTube channel. So if you want to go back and watch this again and get all the links that we're talking about, be sure to go to our YouTube channel. So it's youtube.com/productiveenvironment, and let us know you're there. You can, get all the resources that we're talking about from over there. All right. So Barbara, you mentioned an assessment. You said get an assessment of where you are now. So I want to just put this link up. We have what we call a productive environment score. So if you're not sure where you are and how productive your environment is now, we encourage you to go and take this assessment, productive environment score, and you'll you'll also, first of all, you'll get your score, and then you'll also get a download of something that is literally gold for you. It is called our Productive Environment Blueprint, or our Office Transformation Blueprint. And we don't recommend having a lot of paper around, but that is one document that we do recommend that you print. And you can put it up in your workspace somewhere you can see it as a reference. And then we have some training pieces that go along with it so that it makes sense to you. So yeah, go find out what your productive environment score is. And like I said, if you want to be more productive in the next year, you want to have less clutter and more life in the next year, don't wait until the next year to start. Start it right now. And one action that you can take, if you're feeling overwhelmed with clutter in your home or in your whole entire office, break it down to one space. Look at your desk or your table if that's where you pay bills and do work. Wherever your workspace is, just take a look there. And this is what we teach in our boot camps. The very first action we teach is to clear the immediately identifiable, obvious clutter. So if it's trash, if it's ponytail, hair ties, if it's coffee cups, unless it's one you're using, get them off of the desk. Get them off of your workspace immediately. Old wrappers, look around now.
Andrea, I think it's important to say here what we've observed, and I saw it with the client yesterday. Mm-hmm. There were lots of things that the client could easily get rid of, but they weren't doing that because they kept focusing on what they didn't know about. And so as a result, they weren't making any progress at all. And so we think about it as kind of like peeling the layers of an onion. So it's like, okay, let's ask. And we, on the sheet that if you fill out the scorecard, which by the way, takes less than 5 minutes, and you can't change what you don't measure. So I personally take my own scorecard every January because things change. Some things I was good at last year, the year before, I'm not so good at. So it's like, I do that every January to say, what is it that I need to work on? And you can't change what you don't measure. Well, that way you have a way of measuring whether you're successful or not in what you're doing. So one of the things that's on the blueprint that you get is called the art of wastebasketry. And notice it's an art. There are no shoulds in it. So there are questions that you can ask to determine whether something is clutter or not. And one of my favorites is asking, what's the worst thing that would happen if I didn't have this? If I threw this away, recycled it, deleted it, and I was wrong, what would happen? And then you say, is that a price I'm willing to pay? And it's not a moral issue. Two people could answer the same thing. And I've used this often in companies. Like two people could say, the worst thing that would happen if I got rid of this would be the boss would yell at me. And one person would say, he'll get over it, throw it away. And the other one will say, I don't want him to keep it. That isn't right or wrong. We use the cost factor. You can keep everything you want if you're willing to pay the price, which is time, space, money, and energy. So asking the question, what's the worst thing that would happen if I didn't have this? Then you decide, is that you're willing to pay?
Mm-hmm. Perfect. That's great. So start with the things that are obvious that you don't have to really think too much about. And then you can practice the art of wastebasketry for the additional things if you're just not sure. So we have so many more things we can teach you guys. But as we wrap up, I want to share, Barbara, that we have some viewers from Northeast India. So if you want to tell everybody a little bit about who's watching us from India.
Oh, fantastic. All the way from India to be able to watch it, isn't it? Cannery, Mark, Matthew. Mark's nine-year-old birthday is today. So that makes this this is a project that some of you are familiar. I've been doing a project called Shepherd's House Ministry in India, and this is the family from there. So what a treat to be able to see them on this call today.
Awesome. Thank you guys for joining us. All right. Well, that is going to wrap us up today. Barbara, do you have any closing thoughts, or you want to go ahead and just wrap?
Well, I would just say, ask yourself the question, what is the one thing that has to happen in your life before the end of this year for you to feel happy with your progress? And then use that 5-step process to identify what that is. And so you can finish your year in style.
Perfect. Thank you. And stay tuned. Make sure you go to our YouTube channel so you can like and subscribe and be notified that we will be talking about calendars and planners and all things related to that for the new year. And so you can submit your questions to us in advance at productiveenvironment.com. And then click contact, and that comes to me directly. So we would love to hear what you want us to share about that. We have a few that we like that we're going to share with you. We, as Barbara said earlier, there is not, if you asked us what's the best calendar, we cannot answer that question, or the best planner, until we have a conversation with you. There is no one best. There are multiple options depending on what you need and how you will use it. So we'll go through a framework basically for you to help you figure out what that is. And then we do have a couple of options that we do like to recommend based on what you need. So, all right. Thanks for joining us today.
See you next week.
See you on the next one. Bye.
Bye-bye.